Hi, I'm Amanda, and I should probably be reading, but instead I'm doing the mid-year book Freakout Tag in October. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. After doing the BookTube newbie tag, I thought it would be good to do a video about the books I'd been reading, and since I wasn't on BookTube in the middle of the year, I thought I'd just go ahead and pretend it was the middle of the year, even though it's more like the 3/4 of the year tag, but details. Time is an illusion. Don't worry about it. Mid-year book Freakout Tag. That's what we're doing. We're doing the mid-year tag. So bear with me. I probably wouldn't even bother doing this in October if I'd already talked about all of these books on my channel. But since I didn't have a channel when this tag came out this year, it seemed like a good framework to get me some good questions to talk about some of the things I've been reading this year, and also give you a good sense of what I read, what I like, my opinions on a few books that you may or may not have heard of, to kind of give you a sense of if this is a channel you want to stick around for. So let's start out with some stats. I had to spend a while updating Goodreads before I started this tag because I had let it get out of date, despite that being one of my bookish goals this year, was to keep better track on Goodreads. I did to a point, but it took a while to kind of look around and track down the books that I didn't have in and kind of slot them in. But once I did, I was really surprised with how many books I'd read this year. I have read 64 books this year, and I thought for sure that was going to be lower. Now, of those 64, 14 books are fiction text print books, 11 were novels or novellas, and 3 were short story collections. It gets a little weird because 2 of the novels were also basically composed of short stories that told one overarching story, but they told one story, and so they weren't really a short story collection. So I included them in novels. It gets a little messy. Books are great, y'all. Of those fiction books, I did consume 3 of them on audiobook, and I gave an average rating to those 14 books of 3.7 stars, which is pretty good. I've had 2 5-star books this year, 6 4-stars, and 6 3-stars. I read 14 Western comics, which included 8 standalones and then selections from 3 ongoing series, as well as 36 manga, which included books from 8 different series, as well as 3 standalones, which I didn't realize when I was counting, but they're exactly the opposite in terms of standalone and ongoing series, which I thought was kind of funny. So my 36 manga also included 6 rereads, 4 of which were from years ago, a while ago, that I reread in order to restart the series, and then 2 that I have reread twice this year already. So that was an interesting breakdown. I did not do star rating breakdowns for my manga or comics. I probably will do the Western comics for a more end of the year breakdown, because since it is so many standalones, I do feel it will be an interesting statistic. But when I rate ongoing manga series, I tend to rate high. They tend to get 5 stars if I'm still enjoying the series and I'm excited to pick up the next one. So that's a little snapshot of my reading year, and now we will get right into the questions. Question number 1 is the best book you've read so far this year. And for me, that is going to be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I really loved this book. I picked this up on kind of a whim. I loved the cover. I especially love this color wave that it was, I believe, a Barnes & Noble exclusive. It's my aesthetic. I'd heard good things about this one, but I didn't really like the original cover, so I hadn't picked it up. But when I saw this cover, I was like, oh yeah, I should actually buy that book. Several booktubers I've follow and share opinions with really liked it, and I think I will too. So this book follows the titular Emily Wilde as she is investigating a fairy population on a northern island in order to complete her encyclopedia of fairy. Emily is so well developed as a character. She is unique. She has strengths and she has weaknesses. And her weaknesses are very apparent, but you root for her anyway. And she has a very distinct voice. Emily isn't a cookie cutter character that could be cut out and replaced with another character from another book. This story relies on Emily being Emily. Emily is joined by her colleague from Cambridge, Wendell Bambleby. I love them together. They are funny. They are incredibly unique and very suited for each other. I like watching them play off of each other. They clearly annoy each other, and yet they still care about each other. It's wonderful. How do I talk about this without spoiling this book? There's a scene involving a ring. I feel like that's vague enough. Where Emily does something very clever and then immediately makes a terrible decision of what to do next. And I loved that. I loved watching her really do this clever thing where you go, oh wow, that's so interesting. She understands magic so well that she was able to do this and then immediately make a terrible decision, and yet you understand why she made it. It's a bad decision, but it makes sense for her character. So I love Emily. I love watching her and Wendell banter with each other. I'm a sucker for banter, and this one was fun. I realized I had a tab in the book, and it goes to probably one of my favorite quotes from the book, which is, "One doesn't need magic if one knows enough stories." And that is a beautiful statement for any reader, and kind of sums up Emily's character on how she approaches things, how she gets through this incredible world of magic without any herself. So I love this book. I'm excited for the sequel, which I haven't read yet, but this was one of my 5 stars this year, and I just loved it. Question 2 is the best sequel you've read so far this year, and that is my other 5-star read, Everyone on This Train is a Suspect. I loved the first book in this series, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, and when I heard there was a sequel, I was a little worried that it wouldn't be able to capture lightning in a bottle a second time. The first book was very self-referential. It included things like telling you in the prologue the page numbers all the deaths were on, telling you the rules of a mystery novel that the novel was going to stick to so you could follow them and know kind of things that were going to happen or tricks that they were or weren't going to play. And I just loved the authorial voice, and I really wasn't sure how a sequel was going to work, especially if it didn't involve a lot of the same characters, and it doesn't. There's only 2 characters in this book who were in the first book, and one of them was barely in the first book. Oh, there are other characters. I forgot about Andy. There's only a few characters in this that carry over from the previous book, so all that time you spent getting invested in those characters kind of falls out, and I wasn't sure if it would be able to recapture it the second time. We follow Ernest Cunningham as he gets on a train with a mystery writers convention, and of course someone dies, and because it is a mystery writers convention, everyone on the train has done a lot of research on murders and forensics and pathology and different things. They all have their different specialties, but the question is could any of them get away with a real murder, and did any of them try? This book did a great job of recapturing what worked in the first one without rehashing the same book over again. This book did feel original. This one did different things. We didn't get the death page counts, even though I loved that so much about the first book. We didn't get that in this one. We had different things to play out with the word count of by this amount of the book, we should have done this. By this point in the book, we should have done this. By this point in the book, we should have done this. And it worked. That part didn't work quite as well for me as the anticipation of knowing when the deaths were coming or being revealed. That just hit for me. But this book is almost a better crafted mystery. I really loved this book. I'm excited to see what comes next. Really good. Strong showing, great mystery, well-paced, and like I said, one of the big problems I feel like mysteries especially have when you get a sequel is they try to rehash the first book too much and don't do anything original. And this one did not do that. This one took what worked in the first one and put its own spin on it, which I greatly appreciated. Love this book, would highly recommend this series. Look forward to what comes next. I will also give a special shout out to Heartstopper Volume 5, as every volume of Heartstopper is great. This one was no exception. I read it earlier this year when it came out, and I love it. I feel like everyone is talking about this book or about the wonderful adaptation on Netflix, but this is a story of Nick and Charlie as they fall in love, and I especially love this volume because we saw development in both of the boys kind of apart from each other. We've seen a lot about their relationship and them coming together, but in this volume we got to see them kind of coming into their own individually, and not just being Nick and Charlie, but being able to be Nick and Charlie on their own so that when they are Nick and Charlie, they're even stronger. It was really cute. I'm excited, but also sad that the next volume is the last one, but solid as always. Question 3 is new releases you haven't read yet, but want to. And I'll start with the ones I own. So I would really like to read A Tempest of Tea. I don't know if that gold foiling shows up horribly on camera or not. We'll see. But this is the Fairy Loot edition. I actually think I prefer the standard cover. So once I read this one, if it's one of those books that is a favorite, it might be a so nice we bought it twice. If I can find it on sale, who knows? We'll see. Because I'm really just not a fan of this cover. I feel like the original art was much more captivating. I really want to read that one. I picked up Dungeons and Drama because it just seems like all the tropes that I love, which seems to be how I find romance books that I like. They tend to be nerdy. This one is, of course, about a musical theater nerd and a boy who plays Dungeons and Dragons. And I love both of those things, so this one seemed like it would be cute. I saw it in the store and had to impulse buy it because it's so cute. Look at them. Look at them. It's cute. And Finley Donovan Rolls the Dice. I haven't read this one yet because I haven't read the third book in the series. The first Finley Donovan was one of my favorite books. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. The second one was fine, but not as good. It did that thing that I was talking about with Everyone on This Train is a Suspect, where the second Finley Donovan basically retold the first story. It didn't go new places with the characters. It kind of just recycled a lot of the same beats from the plot. There was a new case, but it did recycle a lot of the same beats. I didn't find it as satisfying. I was hoping it would go some new places. Then I heard the third book was not great. I had already bought it. I haven't read it because I was waiting on the audiobook because I had consumed the first 2 through audio and wanted to continue doing that. So it's been sitting on my shelf, but I heard that the fourth book, which came out earlier this year, is better than the third book and reaffirmed some people's love of the series. They were like, ah, yes, this is more like it. So I'm hopeful this one is good. I will probably binge at least the third and the fourth one sometime later. I've been nervous about it, so I haven't picked it up yet, but I did make sure to get it because I wanted to make sure I had the hardback to be the same size so I didn't get stuck with mismatched editions. As for books I don't yet own, I am very interested in How to Become a Dark Lord or Die Trying. That seems like such a fun book. It's a release I had on my radar. I just haven't seen it. Also interested in a novel love story, although I've heard so things about that one. So that one might be one I pick up on audiobook, which tends to be how I consume a lot of my romance anyway. And then finally, of course, the second Emily Wilde. We only haven't picked it up because we wanted to get a matching paperback edition. I think it's out now. We just need to go down to the store and pick it up. Question 4 is, what are your most anticipated releases for the second half of the year? And a few of the ones I'm going to mention are already out, but they did come out in the second half of the year, so I'm going to count it. First of all, we have A Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer, which had a beautiful cover and it sounded fun. I'm very interested in it. I'm also interested in Academy for Liars, as well as Graveyard Shift, and of course, the sequel to my 5-star sequel this year, Everyone This Christmas Has a Secret, which I will be reading as soon as I get it so that I get those nice wintry Christmas vibes. I'm thrilled that both of the books I read that have 5 stars have other books I can immediately read this year that will be new releases, so I'm very excited about that. Question 5 is, what was your biggest disappointment this year? And I am so sad about this one, y'all. My biggest disappointment was Scary Stories for Young Foxes, The City. This is a book I feel not a lot of people are probably familiar with, not a lot of people are talking about unless you read a lot of middle grade. But the reason, this is a 3-star book. It was fine, but the reason it's my biggest disappointment is this book, the first book in the series, was a 5-star read for me. I read this last year during Summerween, and I loved it. It does such a good job of capturing classic ghost stories through the lenses of foxes. So you have like what a zombie story would look like through foxes, which turns out to be rabies, which is so clever. You have a boogeyman story, a witch story, a monster story. they're so well realized. And then the overarching framing device has a message about the power of storytelling and what stories are for that just resonated so well with me that this was an immediate 5-star. I loved this book. So of course, I was really excited for the second one. Whoops, for the second one. I read this one during Summerween this year, and the longer I went through it, the more disappointed I was, because I could tell that this wasn't going to recapture that lightning in the bottle from the first one. It was just okay. It was stories about cute foxes, but this one was a lot more one note. It's in the city. The dangers are humans. Pretty much all the stories are about humans or things humans made, like cars or machines. Oh, and then also rabies, again, because rabies is scary. There's a really questionable decision I feel the author made toward the end of this book, where a character's problem is resolved incredibly unrealistically, in my opinion, and that hurts the power of the story a lot. I also feel like this book weakens the first book because of the way they tie the elements of the first book into this one. I didn't like that part at all. I almost wish this book didn't exist, so this one could stand all by itself without this one tainting the stories in this one. It's not just that this book is here, it's that it directly references and develops on some of the things that I felt made this book so strong in ways I didn't love. I don't know. I could do a whole video about this, guys. I don't know if anyone is clamoring for me to do an in-depth dissection of 2 middle grade books, but highly recommend this one. Read this book. And I was just so sad that after the high of this 5-star, I ended up with a 3-star that wasn't terrible. It just was in no way the book I was hoping it would be. Again, comment down below if you want to see me ramble about these 2 books for an extended period of time. I could do it. I have a lot to say about 2 middle grade books. Long story short, this one was a disappointment. I will also briefly mention under disappointments, The Paris Apartment, which I do not have because I listened to on audiobook. My husband and I started listening to the audiobook in March and did not finish it until July. And we must have checked it out from the library 2 or 3 times where it just lapsed without us listening to it again. We've listened to all of Lucy Foley's books except for the most recent one that came out this summer. I think the audiobooks are incredibly well done. They have a different narrator for each POV. They're very well produced. And I just think they're fun to absorb through audiobook. I still feel the guest list has been the strongest. The Hunting Party was a bit worse, but I liked The Paris Apartment even less than that. It was a letdown. I wasn't expecting a lot from it, which is why I don't feel it's my most disappointing book, but it's what I thought I'd mention because it was disappointing. We were about halfway through and we had to just tell ourselves we need to finish it. We figured out a lot of the twists, and some of the things that were revealed in such a way that, you know, when you have a first-person book and there's a secret that the author doesn't want you to know, so the narrator has to kind of talk around things and say things in ways that no normal person would say them, because it's not a secret to them, it's a secret to the reader. And they're just narrating what's happening. They're not trying to keep it a secret. That was a problem in this book. Early on especially, there was a big reveal about the people in this apartment building, and it felt very frustrating knowing that it had to be so carefully constructed when all the chapters are in first person, and it was pretty silly that none of this had come up in any of the people's first person narrations. But again, I wasn't expecting a ton from that one. So while it was a disappointment, it was just kind of a disappointment rather than a disappointment. For disappointments, I will also mention a manga, The Clockwork Apple by Osamu Tezuka. I love Tezuka. Tezuka is the grandfather of manga. He's great. Look at this cover. It's beautiful. This was sold as an anthology of creepy, suspenseful short stories, and I was sold. And it didn't really deliver. I think I gave this 3 stars. There was at least one story in here I actively hated. The others were okay to fine. This did not work for me. It might work for others. I was really looking forward to it. I love creepy, suspenseful stories. And this didn't do it for me. The cover's still pretty though. Gets me every time. Cover gets me every time. And finally, for disappointments, I will mention the Festival of Shadows. If you watch my doobie tag, you know that I love stories set in and about Japan, which this one is. It is written by, I believe, a French team, although the story is completely set in and about Japan. And knowing that some choices in the book made a little more sense, I love Japanese folklore in terms of monsters and demons and ghosts. They're called yokai in Japanese. I love Japanese yokai. I think they're amazing. They're fun. There's so many, and it's so much fun to look into. It's one of my favorite aspects of Japanese culture. This one is a ghost story that is kind of removed from that. It doesn't, while the book is set in Japan, it doesn't really draw on the things I'm familiar with. It more of establishes its own set of magical ghost story, which is fine. It just wasn't quite what I was expecting. The first half of this was really strong. I liked the world building. I liked finding things out. I liked seeing things progress as the relationships developed and we were kind of solving a mystery. But the second half of this, I felt really dropped the ball. There were some implications toward the end about being very aware that I am on YouTube, becoming dead on purpose, that I didn't vibe with. It's nothing directly stated, but some of the vibes around choices characters were making didn't quite sit with me. I wanted to love this one, but I didn't. It got 3 stars. I was hoping it would be a 5-star. On to happier things. Question 5 is, what was your biggest surprise of the year? And for me, that's going to be When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. I had never read anything by Veronica Roth, and this is a teeny tiny little book that I think my husband picked up. And I was getting over being sick, and I wanted to read, but I didn't want anything too chunky. And so I saw this one on the cart and just said, hey, I'm going to read that. And I devoured it in a single sitting. This was so good, and I wasn't expecting anything from it. I had absolutely no expectations going in, and I loved this. It only barely didn't get a 5-star because I did feel some of the relationships felt a bit rushed. I don't even want to call it a romance. There's an attraction that feels a bit rushed, which it has to. Look at the size of this book. But it takes place over basically 2 days, and the attraction didn't quite feel earned, even though I was fine with it. It was great. I wanted more. I wanted more of everything in this book. If this book had been a full-size book and was able to carry through all of the good things I loved about this book over the course of a full-length novel, it probably would be a 5-star novel. I want more in this universe. I don't think there's anything planned right now. I'm hoping she comes back to this and tells more stories. This story deals with Polish folklore, which I was completely oblivious to. So every time a creature would come up, I would be Googling, what is this spirit, or what is this thing that they're talking about, so I could see it. I loved the magic in this. I enjoyed the characters a lot. I really liked this book. I came out and told my husband immediately, you have to read this. I really liked it. So, expecting absolutely nothing and being blown away. I loved this book. Again, I would read 6 more books set in this world, especially given how things shake out at the end of the book. I would love to see how that continues on and what the characters in this book get up to. I want more. Finally, for a surprise, and this one really was a surprise, is the Batman Justice Buster manga series. I picked this up because I like manga and I like Batman, and I wasn't expecting anything from it. I was expecting it to be another Batman series. And the first volume really felt that way. It felt like this is just another take on Batman. It had a couple interesting elements. For example, yeah, he's on the cover, so it's not a spoiler. The Joker is a hero, which was surprising. The first one ends with a reveal that only works if you're already a fan of Batman media. But if you're already a fan of Batman media, it completely fails as a reveal because there's no way you as the reader haven't figured out that character's identity at all. And it's presented as a like, moment. It really doesn't work. However, when we got to volume 2, there's a reveal in this book that absolutely blew me away. I was absolutely shocked at what we were doing. And then the third book made some choices I don't like because I'm mad about it, but I'm really excited to see where the story goes from here. This is basically a story. Bruce Wayne has been Batman for 3 years. He became Batman the same way we all know, but everything after that is up for grabs to be changed. So it has some tropes like an evil AI that doesn't super excite me, but some of the character choices they're making in these later volumes, I was very impressed by. So this was a surprise. I was not expecting to love this as much as I do. Can't wait to see more of this. If you're a Batman fan, I recommend picking it up. Very good. Question 7 is a favorite new author, either a debut or just new to me. This one was tough because a lot of the books I read this year were from authors I have previously read from. So there wasn't a long list to choose from, and it has to be Heather Fawcett for Emily Wilde. I loved this. I'm so excited to read more of her books. I'd never read from her before, and it was my best book of the year, so she has to be my new favorite author. So, for sure. But I wanted to give a special shout out also to the team behind Akane Banashi, Yuki Tsunegawa, and Takamasa Moi. This is a manga that should not work. Much like I felt Given is about musicians, and that is it's very hard to pull off a auditory art in a visual medium. This does the same thing. Akane Banashi follows Akane as she works her way toward being a professional rakugo performer. And rakugo is a traditional Japanese art of storytelling. You sit on a mat and you talk to your audience. Let's see. Telling very traditional stories. And it's all about the storytelling. My husband and I have talked about that this feels like a sports manga almost. She goes to tournaments, she competes, she studies skills and gets better at a certain skill. There are other people who have a really good skill of their own. So not showing, they could do this by just not showing the performances and just telling you how it went. But that would be like showing up to a sports tournament and then not showing the games and just being like, well, we won, and it wouldn't work at all. This does such a good job of immersing you in this art. It's all about the voices they're doing and their intonation and how fast they go or how slow they go. And it does a really good job of showing Akane achieving these things through pictures. That it was just really impressive. I'm very interested to see if this gets an anime adaptation. I don't think it does yet. I'm not sure. Because this was made for an anime adaptation. Any adaptation of this closer to the original art is going to be great, provided they can really capture the essence of rakugo and maybe even get some professional rakugo performers to be in the show and perform. Who knows? But I'm really impressed by this one. It was great. Question 8 was newest fictional crush, and I struggled with this one because I am a stone's throw away from 40 and just didn't read that many books that made me swoon this year, I guess. But I decided on Nico from One Among Crows. Like I said, I don't even want to call it a romance. The attraction in this book is fast. It kind of makes sense given where the characters are in their lives. They were cute. I thought the flirting worked. So Nico would be my fictional crush. He can flirt with me. Question 9 is newest favorite character, and it's not a surprise. It's Emily Wilde. I love her. I love her dog. She's great. I hate to keep talking about the same book for multiple questions, but I love Emily. She's my favorite character. I am so excited to read more about her. Like I said, she is so fully realized as a person. I just can't wait to see what happens next. This is a complete cheat, but I'm doing it anyway because it's my channel and I can do what I want. Also for favorite characters, I'm gonna say these boys, these wonderful boys. Ooh, that foiling is really gonna screw up the camera. Okay. Please forgive me. I am not as well versed in pronouncing Chinese names as I am Japanese names. This is Lu Guang and this is Cheng Xiaoxi, and they are wonderful. I love them. That shining is going to bother me, so. The reasons this is a cheat are twofold. First of all, I fell in love with these characters from the animated show that these two star in, which came first. I devoured this show. I love it. So I didn't fall in love with them in book form. I fell in love with them in TV form. And the second reason this is a cheat is because this book is just the TV show. It is literally screenshots of the show with word bubbles. So this hardly even feels like a comic. I bought it because I love the show and I want to own it anyway. I want to support the show in any way I can. So I bought it even knowing it was no original art, just the art from the show. I'm fine with it, but it's hard to recommend to people because it is just the show in screenshot form. So if you're interested, check out the show. But know that these guys became my new hyperfixation. I love this series. But of course, in this case, the original animation is going to be better than that animation chopped into pieces to be in a book. So it's a cheat, I admit it. But when else am I going to be able to talk about this? Question 10 is a book that made you cry. And for me, it was an audiobook I listened to with my husband this summer by Eric LaRocca called This Skin Was Once Mine. The reason it made me cry, one of the stories begins with a character detailing the end of his mother's life in hospice care and then her passing. And I listened to this book about a year after I lost my own mother to cancer, and she also went through hospice care. The detail and similarity that Eric LaRocca brings into the beginning of the story was so close. The details hit so strongly that it was hard to listen to, just because it was so similar to a grief that I had recently gone through myself. I would absolutely not be surprised to hear that he has firsthand experience with losing someone after they've been in hospice care at home at the end of a long illness, because the details were just too familiar. I'm glad we were listening to it on audiobook because I don't know that I could have forced myself to consume it with my eyeballs. I don't know that I would have been able to keep going. On audiobook, I was able to just wait it out and see if it got better. And it did. The story gets weird and very unfamiliar to what I went through. So, but the beginning, when things are still normal and just the description was really close to home. I didn't love the Eric LaRocca collection. I didn't love it. Really, the only story I really loved was the last one. The last one was very good. I liked it. The other stories were pretty meh for me. I think I gave the book a 3-star, but it did make me cry. On a much lighter note, question number 11 is books that made you happy. I'll admit I struggled a little bit with this one. Like, of course, Emily Wilde made me happy. Of course it did. But I ended up going with Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, which I read back in, I think, March for Kayla from Books and Lala's Literally Dead Book Club. This one, well, everything I said about Emily Wilde really being a character, Vera Wong is the same. Vera Wong has very clear character flaws, but she is very much her own person. I remember after when I started this one, I believe I read the first like page and a half to my husband because it just gave such a clear vision of who Vera was. And I just wanted him to know what I was experiencing. Vera makes some pretty poor decisions in this book, but you kind of understand why she makes them, even if you know they're bad decisions. One of my favorite parts is when she's talking to her son and she's like, what if I had a flash drive that I couldn't open? And he's like, why do you have a flash drive you can't open? And she's like, oh, I'm just talking. None of this happened. It was on the TV. Bye. This is one of those books where 75% of the plot could be resolved if the characters would just sit down and have a conversation. But because everyone is keeping a secret, things pile on and continue until finally it all comes to a head. But it's really cute found family, and I was really rooting for the found family in this book. Like I wanted them to just all be happy together and be able to stay together with this cute little unexpected group that they formed of people that they probably shouldn't have met. But it was very cute. I really liked the characters. It was sweet. It was a 4-star. It didn't quite make it to 5-star for me, but I really enjoyed it, and I remember being happy when I was reading it. Now, if you want absolute joy, you can't do much better than Cat Gamer. This manga is amazing. If you like cats and you like video games, you should be reading this. You should read it right now. Drop what you're doing. Order this series. It's amazing. This series follows an office worker who is known for not ever working overtime because she's so good about finishing all of her work by quitting time. And everyone is very impressed. And then you find out that it's because she wants to go home and play video games. She prioritizes getting things done so she could spend all of her time and money on video games. And then one day, she adopts a cat. She has never owned a pet before. So the way she approaches raising this cat is basically like leveling him up like a video game character. It's got so many fun references to video games. And the cats are adorable. There's no high stakes in this one. Nothing bad has happened to anybody. It's just a woman and her now 2 cats living their best lives, learning about each other, and thriving. It's great. This book always makes me happy. It's a smile. This book is a smile wrapped in some pages. It's great. I love it. And then again, because I don't know when else I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about Penguin Gentleman. This is another one of those manga that I don't know that anyone else has heard of. I picked this up because I have loved penguins since I was 3 years old. It's been a whole part of my personality, y'all. So I saw this in the store. I didn't know much about it. The description on the back doesn't tell you very much, but I thought, sure, it tells me that there's penguins that these handsome boys are actually penguins in disguise. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. So I picked it up. And it turns out that this book is just penguin facts. Here's a description of how to tell certain penguin species apart. There's a part that talks about penguins panting. This part explains how Adelie penguins court. Like, I didn't learn very much from this book because, again, penguins have been part of my personality for decades, so I have read numerous books about penguins and know many a thing about them. So I didn't learn a lot. But if you're interested in learning about penguins and want to do it through dapper men in tuxedos telling you about themselves in just the most unhinged way, it made me very happy. Again, it's one that's hard to recommend because I feel like there's a very specific audience for this book, and I am it, and it filled me with immense joy. But I don't know, if you love penguins, you will love this book. If you want to learn more about penguins and you like manga, pick up this book. If penguins are just mad to you, this isn't going to work for you at all. But it really made me happy. And again, it's one of those books that I don't know when I'm ever going to be able to talk about again. So I wanted to bring it up here. It's really fun. It made me happy. Question number 12 is, what is the most beautiful book you have bought or received this year? And I hesitate with this one, but these are really the only special edition, nice, pretty books I've bought, and the artists still deserve to be recognized, so we're going to go with it. I purchased the Lit Joy illustrated editions of Stardust and The Ocean at the End of the Lane, and these books are gorgeous. Neil Gaiman was my favorite author for a very long time, and the recent allegations against him have, of course, left me disgusted and disappointed and sad. But the reason these books are beautiful is because of the artist and not necessarily the words inside. And these artists deserve to be celebrated regardless of whose work they are attached to. I especially wanted to shout out the Stardust edition because without this little card that came with the book, I don't think the illustrator's name is mentioned anywhere in this book, which feels like it should be illegal. The whole draw of this book is that it's an illustrated edition. I have other copies of Stardust. The whole reason to want this one is because of the illustrator. And like I said, nowhere can I find mention in this one of the illustrator. So I will shout them out. The designer of the cover is Andrew Davis, and the person who did the beautiful illustrations, here's a nice little example. They're so pretty, y'all. And the person who did the beautiful artwork is Montse Rubio. Here's Wall, where we begin our tale. And then here's that beautiful cover without the text and with. This issue was corrected with The Ocean at the End of the Lane, where the illustrator, Nick Henderson's name, is in the book, where it should be, for anyone who might want to see it. Here you have illustrated by. There's no excuse as to why that isn't in Stardust, and I'm kind of mad for the illustrator that it isn't there. Let me show some more of the art from Ocean. They're just stunning. Beautiful little books. Little cat. That's pretty far in the book. Let's not show that one. That's pretty cool. Here's the cover and the back cover. All of which were done by Nick Henderson. Yeah, these are beautiful books. I would not buy them right now, and LitJoy has pulled any mention of this series even existing off of their website, but these books are beautiful, and the people who made them beautiful deserve to be celebrated. Pretty books. And our final question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I have a stack. For books, I'm going to keep it short. I am working my way through the Undetectables. I have been reading this book since July. I really need to finish it. I just keep setting it aside for other things, other readathons. I first set it aside for Summerween, and then it's just been really hard to pick back up. It's a book that has a lot of characters, so when I did pick it back up in September, it was just really slow going as I tried to remember who was who and how they related and what was going on and who was this person that was named. Was I supposed to know who they were? And it was a lot. It's a mystery, so those things do matter, or they could matter. I don't know yet. I haven't solved the mystery, but I'm a little over halfway through it. I just need to buckle down and finish this one. It's not bad. It's not currently not quite as good as I wanted it to be. I can see it going either way, between a 3 or a 4 star, depending on how the second half develops. My major complaint with the book right now is that we are taking a lot of time to go from plot point to plot point, and very little of what we are doing is under the agency of the main characters. They're kind of just being at a place where things happen or being told to go places without doing much investigation of their own. But the magic is really cool. There's a character in here who's a ghost who's stuck wearing cat ears for all of eternity because he died while wearing a Halloween costume, and so he's stuck. He's on the cover. You can see him. So yeah, I read the back of this and immediately had to buy it because it just sounded really fun. And it has been fun, but not quite as fun as I wanted, but I just really need to finish it. Next is a book I bought because I saw a lot of people talking about it, and when I read the synopsis, I went, that sounds like exactly my thing, which is Boys in the Valley. I want to say there were several booktubers who I follow who mentioned this or had read it or had mentioned it being on their radar. I really want to not sit on it like I do with a lot of my purchases, where a book sounds amazing and I just sit on it and don't read it. This one I'm putting at the top of the TBR. I want to get it done. I want to get it read and enjoy it. And hopefully it'll be a new 5 star. So next is the manga that I really want to read by the end of the year are the volumes I already own in series I am currently reading. Those include Blue Lock, Spy Family, with special mention to the official guide, Akane Banashi, that's 5, which is still enough to hold in one hand. However, Witch Hat Atelier, I cannot hold in one hand. This is what I have to get through. I've read the first 3 and I want to get caught up. This was the winner of my husband's manga tournament that he ran. I've also purchased 16 volume 1s of manga for my own manga tournament inspired by Gavin Reads It All and Gavin Reads All the Manga. When my husband and I watched him do a similar manga tournament of first volumes, we thought that sounds like a great idea, and we both immediately made a list and ended up purchasing our own. Witch Hat was the winner of his, and some of the titles in my tournament have been on my to-read list for a long time, and I'd really like to get to them. So there could be a lot of manga in my future. That concludes the mid-year Freakout Tag. Thank you so much if you made it this far. I appreciate you being temporally lost with me while I do a mid-year tag in October. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to tell YouTube you want to see more of me. If you've read any of these books, if you've added them to your TBR, love them, hate them, anything, leave me a comment down below. I'd love to chat with you about books. If you really want to leave a comment but you don't know what to say, leave me some sort of fall emoji in the comments so I'll know you made it here to the end and you will have my heart. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Bye.